Morning, everybody. So, my name is Katrina. I think I've spoken to a lot of you already in terms of the course, excuse me, over the phone when you were signing up. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Katrina and I am the tutor for the collections module. So, what I'm going to cover in the next kind of half hour, 45 minutes, I may overlap a little bit on what Declan mentioned a couple of times, but the core of what I'm going to talk about is the collections module itself. So, what can you expect learn from the collections module and what can you expect? What are the key takeaways and how is it going to benefit you? So the first, it's split into four sub modules in collections. And broadly speaking, so the first part of it, or the first set of notes, really does talk about credit as an overall function. So it's a part of the course that is really adaptable to whoever you are in credit. So whether you're a credit controller, literally just making the calls, dealing with the clients, or whether you're an assistant manager or a manager, or even as far up as a credit director, there's something in that module to be learned for everybody. So it would start with kind of an introduction to collections. It's the core of your position. It's the core of what you do. It's the collection of the money. So rather than kind of straying off and talking about the function and talking about the management of it, it really is that introduction into how do you actually do the day job, which is how do I collect what is due from my client while maintaining a good relationship with that client, and maintaining that client as a long-term client. So, you've got a lot of credit controllers that come into the business and they will obviously collect what they need to collect from somebody, but they'll do it in a kind of a rackshod way, which means that the customer is not happy. And, customers are king. They are important to us. So we need to develop our skill set to make sure that we are able to collect money from those clients, but maintain those clients and make sure that those clients are still happy. So it starts with an overview of consumer credit. So a lot of this is stuff that you probably think you know already. I know I certainly did when I did the course myself many moons ago now. It gives you an overview of the role of the collector within a company. It would give you an idea of what the importance of consumer credit is. So how important is credit? It's obviously very important in the companies that you guys work with because you wouldn't have jobs otherwise. But the importance of consumer credit and maintaining good credit with your clients. There's a section then on financial literacy, which is really, really important and really interesting to read from your own perspective. So, when should I get a credit card? When should I take out a car loan? It's amazing how many credit controllers are able to slip into credit control positions, but yet their own financial states are in a bit of a mess. So it's a very, very good self-learning section there on financial literacy. Then remaining in control of your finances, and therefore being able to translate that into the position that you do as credit controller, remaining in control of credit. It then branches into the understanding of credit, the role of credit in business. So, it was a very, very long time, for a very, very long time, the salespeople in every company, the sales teams were the superstars of the company. So you'd get those big, broad corporate emails coming into your inbox talking about the latest big sale that sales made, or the targets were hit, or they exceeded their targets. I've worked in a few multinationals myself in sales and in credit control, and certainly, singing the praise of the sales team has traditionally been the measurement of the success of a company. But we all know that a sale is not, in fact, a sale until those funds land on the account. So, somewhere over the last while, people have started to recognize that while salespeople are hugely important, I'm not taking away anything from a salesperson, equally as important is the credit controller that brings the funds in to cover that sale. So people are starting to realize and starting to recognize the importance of having qualified credit controllers working in conjunction with sales to manage the credit and manage the cash flow of the company. I think, like, I could speak for Declan in this sense. Declan, and will say the rest of the organizations that he's talked about as well, that's one of their main, I suppose, mission statements, is to bring that recognition to the industry, that again, salespeople, while hugely important, equally as important, or maybe even more so important, is the credit controller that actually brings those funds in and makes the sale an actual sale. So understanding the role of credit in the business, so understanding the importance of your role on a broader level than you would on a day-to-day basis, is covered in this section. The next part then is the importance of your customers. It is very, 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 very easy to forget how important each one of your customers are. Credit control is a stressful job. It is an absolutely stressful job, and it can be tumultuous. It can be a little bit chaotic. There can be a lot of confrontation from time to time. So recognizing and reminding yourself of the importance of the customers and keeping those customers on side. And the whole thing, the mantra of the course is that it will enable you to go and collect money, not to chase money. Chase has a negative connotation to it. If you're collecting money as opposed to chasing money, then the chances are that customer will pay you, remain a happy customer, and come back and purchase again. So that's what the idea of a good credit controller is. It's collecting money when money is due, but making sure that that customer is happy to pay and happy to come back again and repeat the business. So the importance of your customers, a huge thing, and you will be reminded of that periodically throughout the collections module. So then kind of deviates a little bit into credit terms and credit limits. So some of this, it might be stuff that you deal with. It depends on the role that you have within the company. Like, we have some students on here today that are from a very, very large organization, and they may not deal with credit terms and credit limits. But again, it is hugely important to understand how those credit terms and how those credit limits are decided, and what are the components that a good credit controller should be looking at before they extend credit to a customer. That particular area will be delved into in a good amount of detail in the risk side of things, but it's certainly covered in the collections course, because to be a good all-round collector, a good all-round credit controller, you need to have a good understanding of what credit terms and credit limits mean, and what they mean for you as a credit controller, and indeed what they mean for your customer. And then there is a section, I've kind of touched on it already. It's, dealing with sales and dealing with other departments that play a part, whether it be the sales department, the logistics department. You need to be able to be a good credit controller. You need to be able to adapt to each and every customer that you deal with, but you also need to be able to adapt to every other department as well. So it really is, you're the conductor of an orchestra in the position that you're in. You're the conductor of an orchestra they're all cogs in the wheel that play a part to a successful sale and a successful collection, and therefore healthy cash flow. So kind of module one, again, it's an introduction to the course. It's a really high level introduction to the collections function as a function, covering the role, covering the function itself. What is your role as a collector? Where do you fit into in the scheme of things? How do credit terms and credit limits impact how you will be on the phone or on email with a client? Dealing with the sales department, dealing with the logistics department, your own financial literacy, adapting to everybody around you, being adaptable to everybody around you. And it really gives that high level introduction to collections and what collections is as a function. In terms of studying through the collections module, and again, this is where I'm going to repeat a lot of what Declan said. The collections module it's my favorite module, not because I'm the tutor, but it's my favorite module out of the entire course, because it is so practically driven. So Declan kind of touched on the fact that there are courses available out there which are hugely academic courses and filled with theory and content. And, you could sit and you could study encyclopedias for hours. But at the end of the day, as a collector, you're dealing with people. So, what we've tried to design and what we try to deliver is a course that will enable you to deal with people, deal with human beings, and become more adaptable to the person that you're speaking with. So, when you're studying through this, the biggest hint that I can give you is complete your short tests. the short tests, they play a huge part because those tests are designed to pick up the key components of every module. So it's just that's the biggest hint I can give you is if you complete your short tests and make sure that you get those right, you do those with the content in front of you. That's a huge part of the preparation for you to be awarded your diploma. The short tests pick up the key points of information within each module and within each subject. Your assignments, the key mantra throughout the collections module is using examples. So when it comes to exam day, we are not going to test your ability to regurgitate information back to us. That's what the Leaving Cert does. That's what the Junior Cert does. You know, you go study a book, come back to us in 15 weeks and we'll test what you can remember. This is not designed like this. This is a test of your understanding of what you've read and your understanding of what you've learned. And a huge part of the collections module, more so than any other module, is being able to demonstrate this, demonstrate your understanding and back it up with examples. So I'm looking down through the screen. I don't think there's anybody on this screen that doesn't work in credit control on a day-to-day basis. What you will find studying through collections is you will find examples of dealing with customers where you'll be able to relate that example back to a part of the collections module. So I'm going to come to that a little bit later. So that's module 1. It is the collections as a role. It's the role of a collector within a company, the role of credit within the company. So it's very much high level. What is it that I do and where do I fit in to the greater scheme of things? Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on to collections module 2? I'll take silence as Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vitaly. I won't take silence. Go ahead there, Vitaly.
Yeah, sorry. I hope that you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, well, it's sorry, I'm from the mobile phone. It's my question is then when we are talking about exam collections module exam, then and you mentioned that you're looking for understanding of the of our understanding of collections module theory, and we need to give real life examples, probably from our companies, from our jobs. Are we supposed to prepare these examples for the exam, or are we supposed to create them at the exam, during the exam?
You know what? During the 15 weeks, these examples will come up. So, for example, module 2 delves into verbal communications, and it talks about communicating well with a customer. And you'll find then that when you come to the exam time, if there's a question on the verbal communications, you'll answer. We'll say, for example, what is the best type of way of writing a letter to a customer, and you'll give example of a letter. What is the right way of dealing with a customer over the phone? You will have a load of examples. When I say prepare them, I don't mean that you have to write an essay on them. I mean keep them at the back of your mind. How often do we have difficult calls with customers on the phones? Do you guys have difficult calls with customers? Nod if you agree. Yeah, I've seen a few people nod. You keep those difficult calls that you've had, keep them at the back of your mind, because I guarantee somewhere in this course it will tell you where you could have done better on that call, where you could have improved, or where you may have done something differently. And I have always found the best assignments that I get and the best answers that I get in an exam is where somebody said, well, I had this difficult customer and I reacted by shouting back. I reacted by replicating their mood. This is what I did wrong. So the whole thing is understanding the content, understanding where you can adapt to somebody better and use an example then to back that information up. Does that make sense to everybody, or am I waffling?
Yeah, thank you.
It makes sense. Cool. So the whole thing with collections, it's such a broader topic. You know, with risk, you get a calculation to do, and it's either right or it's wrong. But with collections, it's all about how you present the case. So, like, if I'll move on to this will start to make a little bit more sense as I move through the different modules. Now, if anyone has a question now, ask it away. or I'll move on to module 2. So module 2, it transitions into a module all around communication. So we've established the role of you in the company. We've established the role of collections. So 99% of being a good collector is being a good communicator. So communications, what a broad topic. It will cover verbal communications. It will cover written communications. And it will also cover face-to-face communications. So verbal communications, I would hazard a guess and say half, if not more of half of your communicating is done over the phone. So that's a huge, huge part of your job. We've all done courses before where trainers have said, smile as you dial, and that comes across on the phone to the person on the other side. It's not just a case of smiling as you dialing. It's a deep dive into what words are you using. So there are right words and there are wrong words. What tone, what volume, what speed are you speaking at? If I talk very, very quickly now, it kind of gives a hint that I'm a bit nervous about what I speak about. If I speak slowly and I enunciate correctly, it exudes a confidence. But that doesn't come naturally. It's something that you've got to practice, and it's something that has to be learned. So using the right words and the right questions is the first thing that you need to learn. And you may be doing this already, but certainly um, demonstrating your ability to be able to substitute bad words for right words. So, for example, your credit limits. I'm going to talk to you, Mr. Customer, about your credit limits. Credit limits already kind of gives a bit of a negative connotation. What other words would be bad words to use? Credit limits is one. Your I'm drawing a blank now completely. The right words, the right questions, and the right words to use. If you substitute the wrong words for right words, which I'll come to a little bit later, actually, I'll pull up the actual question on it. Um, you're setting you're setting the communication on a positive stance. So you're starting with that customer with the right words, the right question. You're starting with positivity. So if you use negative words in the way that you speak to that customer, the customer will then replicate that and you will get back a negative answer. So using the right words, using the right questions will get you to the right result. Using the correct tone, using the correct volume and the correct speed. That then results in what you say and what they hear. So you need to be asking the right questions to get to the right answer. So at the end of the day, you're looking for a payment. So what you're essentially doing and what your job is, it's not necessarily just collecting money from somebody, it's enabling that person to pay. So you're helping that client to pay their bill, which makes an even better collector. So once you perfect that art of being able to adapt to the person in front of you. You adapt your language, you adapt your volume, your tone, and your speed. You'll get more out of the call, and then therefore will develop your confidence with dealing with your client base going forward. So that's all about verbal communications. I will in an email after this now, and you will cover it in module 2. It's funny the types of words, the credit limit being a negative word. And for the life of me, I can't even think of a positive word at this moment in time. I should have written some of them down. But there's a whole section on words that you kind of think, jeepers, I've been doing that all the time. Where if you replace those negative words with positive words, you've actually set that call up for a far more successful result than you would have done. So it covers the verbal communications, how you deliver yourself and how you deliver the message over the phone to your clients and how you develop your confidence in doing that. We then move into the other communications. So this would cover writing letters, it would cover your emails, your text messages, face-to-face meetings, if that's applicable for you. And then, does anybody do door-to-door visits anymore? Anyone on the call do door-to-door visits? No, people are shaking their heads. I have never done door-to-door visits, but it's actually quite common still in Ireland to do a door-to-door visit, depending on the company. So there's a different structure for each of these methods of communication. And what we will do is we will show you the best, most targeted, easiest way communicate with your customers using these methods to get the most positive results out of it. So communication really is, it's an art form, and there's practical exercises in this. There's some really cool tests that you can do as well, some listening tests and stuff like that. And believe it or not, you can really adapt this to your everyday life, not just you as a credit controller, but you can adapt this to your everyday life when you're dealing with friends and family as well. Active listening skills, being able to really clue into what your customer is saying back to you, and then being able to turn that into a positive result. But the whole objective of communicating with your customer is to get to that end goal and get to that positive result that you're essentially looking for. So that's what module 2 is all about. It's all about the communication side of things. How am I going to communicate with this customer, whether they be, a quiet customer, an angry customer, a sad customer, a happy customer? How do I adapt my communication method to that person in order to get the most positive result from that interaction? And then being able to translate that into writing good letters, writing good emails, writing a good text message, and then having, if the time arises, having a good face-to-face meetings. I think, the art of letter writing is something that is just nearly completely forgotten about these days. I mean, you look at some of the shorthand on text messages, and I mean, I always thought I was quite a young woman until I tried to, my niece, she's a teenager, trying to read some of her posts, and I have no idea what she's talking about. So language is developing. Language is developing year on year. So it's being able to keep up with that and make sure that we don't forget that unwritten art form, which is letter writing and email writing. So that's what module 2 is all about. It's all about the communications side of things. So Vitali, to go back to what you asked me about live examples and stuff like that, if you are preparing for the exam, and I'm giving a lot of hints here about the exam, if you're preparing for the exam for collections, keeping a little mental bank of the bad phone calls, and then not necessarily bad phone calls either, the really good phone calls where you hung up the phone and you said, yes, I got it. I got that result that I was looking for. I guarantee those examples will fit somewhere along the way within the course, whether it be an assignment or whether it be the end of the course exam, where you can demonstrate where you've put this information into practice. So that's the communication side of things. It's module 2. I'm going to stop for a moment and open the floor for any questions, guys. I hope I'm making sense here. Okay. Silence is golden. Okay, so we've covered the role of the collector. We've covered the role of credit in the company. Where do you fit into the scheme of things? What is your job as a collector? Then we moved into the communications side of things, which is 90% of what you do. It's communicating with people with a view to getting what you want. It's a view to getting what you want, which is essentially payment at the end of that interaction with the client. So module 3 then starts to go into the other side of things. So we've covered our role, we've covered our communication methods and how we conduct ourselves. So what about that other person on the other side now, the person that you're dealing with? This module will deal with understanding your customer and understanding the person that you're dealing with. So there's a whole section, and this section is the coolest section. It is the section about people's processing styles and people's personalities. So we're dealing with different personalities day to day. You're dealing with the Jekylls and you're dealing with the Hydes. How can you become more well-rounded? You adapt yourself to the Jekylls and you adapt to the Hydes in order to get that positive result. So people have different processing styles. Processing styles comes into how am I going to speak to this person on the other end of the phone in order to enable them to pay? There's different types of processing styles. So you've got an auditory processing style where somebody will want to be on the phone with you. They hear, they listen, they take that and they process it that way. There's other clients that have no interest in being on the phone with you whatsoever. They want to see the numbers on an email and they need to respond via email. So that would be a digital processing style. So this section will help you to understand Who is it that I am trying to communicate on the other side? And what is the best processing style that I can choose to communicate with that person to enable them to pay? So dealing with that other person on the other side, I need to be adaptable. I need to be able to adapt to that person to make sure that I'm enabling them in the best way possible to make that payment and clear that bill. So it delves into processing styles, it delves into personality types, it delves into all of that sort of the human consciousness thing, and it's a very, very educational section, you know, on dealing with different types of people. You need to do that as a credit controller. You need to do that for sales as well. Some people get sold to in different ways. So it's very much enabling you to adapt to the person that you're trying to get that elicit that positive result from. So the first section then of module 2 is all about the other person. Who am I dealing with? And what way do I need to interact with this person to get the most positive result out of that person? So we move then into the person's circumstances. So it's not all down to the person, it will be down to their circumstances. And we move into their circumstances for payment. So let's then delve into the area of non-payment. So, you know, there will be situations where you find yourself somebody won't pay. So there's three different types of customers. There's customers that can't pay, so they physically can't pay. There's customers that won't pay, and there's customers that shouldn't pay. So the customers that can't pay, there's a whole process involved in dealing with customers like that and getting them from where they're at right now to a point where they will pay you. The customers that won't pay, that then delves into the whole area of negotiation skills. And then the customers that shouldn't pay, have we made a mistake? Have the logistics department made a mistake? There are three different types of customers. I can't pay, I won't pay, I shouldn't pay. You need to understand what kind of customer am I dealing with and then adapt to that person's circumstances and take the proper step to get to a resolution. That's that module. It's understanding your customer, understanding their processing style, therefore understanding how do I communicate effectively with that customer? How do I adapt to their personality type? How do I adapt my request to their circumstances? And then, you know, the critical part of it is if the money is not coming in, why is the money not coming in? Is it a case that they are not able to pay? Is it a case that they simply won't pay? Or is it a case that they shouldn't pay? So you're deep diving into each aspect of that, and there's a process to be followed in each of those examples. And you will find once you work your way through this module, you will find the different types of customers in your day-to-day life. Then you'll say, oh, Joe Bloggs, God, I remember now, he's one that can't pay. So, you know, you'll find those examples. You will find that the theory that we're giving you is very practical theory. It comes up on a day-to-day basis. So by studying this and really applying it to your job, it's like Declan said, we should see instant results. You will find yourself getting better and better even as you move through this course. So I will stop for a moment before I move on to the final section, which is module 4. If anybody has any questions at this point. No? Great. So module 4 then is really, it's a wrap up. It's a kind of a tying in of all the modules together. So it's getting those results that we talked about, getting that positive result. It will give you the different stages of those processes, having a start, a middle, and an end, and being able to take that and apply it to every single interaction you have with your customer, whether it be over the phone, over email, or over a letter. It talks about, you know, identifying issues, being able to deal with those issues, and essentially getting commitment from the customer. So we're wrapping up everything. We're looking at your role in the company. We're looking at you as a person and you as a credit controller. We're looking at the customer. What do they bring to the interactions? And now we're looking at finally getting that positive result out of those interactions. So being effective on a day-to-day basis, regardless of how the interaction is taking place, being effective in your position. That branches out a little bit as well. Credit management is a very, very, very difficult job. It can be a very, very stressful job. So there's a section in this module about looking after yourself, looking after your own mental well-being, looking after your own mental health, and making sure that you're looking after yourself and not pushing yourself too far, making sure that you're looking after your sense of well-being so that you are therefore more effective in the position. And then, unfortunately, in credit management, regardless of how good you are, there will be the ones that get away and there will be the ones that require escalation. So there is a section on third party agencies where it will advise you in terms of what sort of escalations you need to take with clients. And obviously that would be done with your internal processes and so on. So, we won't win them all. It will talk about your negotiating skills and being able to get the best possible result out of each interaction. But there will be some instances where you will have to relay them on to whether it's a legal department or a debt collection agency. It just ties up that last stage of the collection process for you. So to summarize the collections module, I hope I haven't bored it down because it is really, really interesting and it's really cool to be able to apply this information to yourself. So it covers your role as a collector within the company. How important is that? It covers your ability to communicate, whether it's verbally or in a written format. How do I get better at communicating with the customer? It educates you on who you are dealing with on the other side. What type of person is my customer? What interaction will they respond to the best, and what style will they respond to best? And then it talks about being able to get the best out of each interaction that you have with those clients to get that payment over the line. So as the last few hints, pay a lot of attention to the short tests. The short tests pick up the key components of each module, the key pieces of information that the course is trying to teach is covered in the short tests. Your assignment will ask you to give examples, for example, of give me an example of a bad call. Tell me where you went wrong on this call, and then using the course notes, give me an example of where you could have done that better. So the whole objective is take this course and use the information, get better, use the information to educate yourself and therefore get better results. So your short tests are hugely important. Your assignments are hugely important. And once you're doing those, it goes back again to the marks. You've accumulated so many marks coming up to the exam. You literally need to go into the exam then and just pass it. That's it. You've done all the prep work. So that's the collections module, and those are the hints that I'm giving you today. Does anybody have any questions for me at this moment in time? Everything I said made sense? Fantastic. Is Declan gone, or Declan, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Perfect. So that's collections covered. Oh, and guys, you will get your first set of notes on Monday.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much, Katrina. What I'll do is I will just stop the recording now. There's a reaction. Stop recording.